The lost city beneath the Sahara. Secrets of the African Atlantis. The sand remembers everything. Beneath the world's largest desert, something impossible is hiding. What if an entire civilization vanished beneath the dunes and we're only now learning to see it? The Sahara wasn't always a desert. 10,000 years ago, this was a green paradise with rivers, lakes, and thriving communities. Scientists call this period the African Humid Period, when monsoon rains turned North Africa into a landscape unrecognizable to us today. Then the climate shifted. The rains stopped, and the green Sahara died. But the question that haunts archaeologists is simple. What happened to the people who lived there? For decades, explorers reported strange formations in the deep Sahara. Satellite images showed geometric patterns beneath the sand. Ground-penetrating radar detected walls, streets, entire city blocks where nothing should exist. In 2009, a team using NASA satellite technology identified over 100 fortified settlements in southern Libya and northern Chad, some dating back 4,000 years. These weren't simple camps. These were sophisticated urban centers with defensive walls, organized streets, and evidence of long-distance trade networks. The discovery started with a British archaeologist named David Mattingly. He was studying the Garamantes, a civilization mentioned in ancient Roman texts, but largely forgotten by history. The Romans called them barbarians, desert raiders who controlled the trade routes through the Sahara. But when Mattingly's team started excavating in the Libyan desert near the Wadi al-Hayat Valley, they found something that contradicted everything written about these people. They found cities, not villages, not outposts, cities with populations in the thousands, with advanced irrigation systems and multi-story buildings. What makes the Garamantes extraordinary is how they survived. The Sahara during their time was already a desert, already hostile to human life. Yet they built an underground irrigation system called fogaras, tunnels that tapped into fossil water deep beneath the sand. These weren't simple wells. They were engineering marvels, hand-dug tunnels stretching for kilometers, some descending 30 meters underground. The system allowed them to farm wheat, barley, and grapes in one of the harshest environments on Earth. They didn't just survive the desert. They mastered it. But the Garamantes are only part of the story. Across the Sahara, from Mauritania to Egypt, evidence keeps emerging of cultures we never knew existed. In 2016, researchers mapping trade routes in Chad discovered the remains of settlements that predate the Garamantes by thousands of years. Stone circles, burial mounds, and what appeared to be astronomical markers dotted the landscape. Some structures aligned perfectly with the summer solstice. Others pointed to star systems that ancient Egyptians also tracked. The connection suggests these weren't isolated tribes. They were part of a network, a web of knowledge and trade that spanned the entire Sahara. Then there's the mystery of the Rishat structure. Locals call it the Eye of the Sahara, a massive circular formation in Mauritania that's visible from space. It's nearly 50 kilometers across, with concentric rings that look almost artificial. For years, scientists assumed it was an impact crater from a meteorite. But detailed surveys revealed no evidence of impact. The rocks are sedimentary, formed by erosion over millions of years. Yet the perfect symmetry, the exact circular pattern, has led some to wonder if ancient people used this natural landmark as a city site. No excavation has been authorized, but satellite imagery shows what might be foundations within the outer rings. The evidence for these lost Saharan civilizations comes from multiple sources. Satellite archaeology uses different wavelengths of light to see beneath sand and vegetation. Thermal imaging detects temperature differences where stone structures lie buried. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses into the earth and maps what bounces back. And then there's LiDAR, laser scanning from aircraft that creates three-dimensional maps of the ground surface. These technologies have revolutionized archaeology in the last 20 years. They let us see what's hidden without ever lifting a shovel. But technology alone isn't enough. When excavation teams finally reached these sites, they found artifacts that told a more complete story. Pottery from the Mediterranean, beads from sub-Saharan Africa, metal tools made with copper from mines hundreds of kilometers away. These people weren't isolated. They were traders, middlemen in a network that connected the Mediterranean world with inner Africa. They controlled the routes, they controlled the oases, and for centuries they controlled the wealth that flowed through the desert. Not everyone agrees on what these discoveries mean. Some archaeologists argue the Saharan settlements were never true cities, that they lack the population density and monumental architecture we associate with urban centers. They point out that many structures are fortified farms, not cities in the classical sense. Others suggest the term lost civilization is misleading, that these were known cultures that simply faded from historical memory when the desert made the region inaccessible. The debate isn't just academic. How we classify these societies affects how we understand the development of African civilizations and their influence on world history. There are gaps in the story we may never fill. We don't know what language the Garamantes spoke. We don't have their written records, if they kept any. We don't know their religious beliefs, their mythology, or how they governed themselves. What we know comes from Roman accounts, which are biased and incomplete, and from the physical ruins, which can only tell us so much. The desert has preserved some things remarkably well, organic materials like wood and leather that would have rotted anywhere else. But it's also destroyed countless sites through erosion, sandstorms, and the simple weight of time. The human story here is one of adaptation and loss. Imagine living in a place that was slowly dying. Each generation would have seen the rains come less frequently, the rivers shrink, the grasslands turn to scrub and then to sand. Some communities moved north toward the Mediterranean or south toward the Sahel. Others stayed and adapted, digging deeper wells, building more sophisticated irrigation, concentrating around the last reliable water sources. And eventually, even that wasn't enough. The fogaras dried up. The cities were abandoned. The sand moved in and buried everything. Why does this matter now? Because it changes our understanding of African history and human resilience. For too long, the narrative said that African civilizations only flourished in the Nile Valley or along the coasts, that the interior was empty, primitive, disconnected from the currents of history. These discoveries prove otherwise. They show sophisticated societies, engineering innovation, and cultural exchange happening in the heart of the continent thousands of years ago. They show that the Sahara wasn't always a barrier. It was a bridge. There's also a climate lesson here. The African humid period ended because of changes in Earth's orbital patterns, shifts that altered where monsoons fell. It happened gradually over thousands of years, but the result was total environmental transformation. The Sahara grew. The people adapted until they couldn't. Today, as we watch deserts expand and rainfall patterns shift, the story of these lost cities feels uncomfortably relevant. They're proof that thriving civilizations can vanish when the climate changes, even with all their knowledge and technology. So what do we know for certain, and what remains speculation? We know the Garamantes existed, that they built cities and irrigation systems, and that they controlled trans-Saharan trade for centuries. We know the Sahara was once green, and that climate change made it a desert. We know satellite technology has revealed hundreds of archaeological sites still buried beneath the sand. What we don't know is the full extent of these civilizations, how they connected to each other, or what their cultural legacy might have been. We're still in the early stages of exploration. What happens next depends on access and funding. Much of the Sahara is politically unstable or physically inaccessible. Libya, where some of the most significant Garamantes sites are located, has been in turmoil for over a decade. Chad and Mali face security challenges that make archaeological work dangerous. Even in stable regions, excavating in the desert is expensive and logistically complex. But technology keeps improving. Each year, satellites get sharper. AI gets better at identifying patterns in imagery. The next major discovery might happen without anyone physically going to the site. In the near term, expect more publications as researchers analyze data already collected. Medium confidence. New excavations will begin in Mauritania and Algeria within 5 years, focusing on sites that predate the Garamantes. High confidence. Amateur satellite archaeologists will continue finding new structures using publicly available imagery. Low confidence. We'll find written records or detailed artwork that explains these cultures in their own words. The sand remembers, but it doesn't speak. These lost cities beneath the Sahara are fragments of a story we're only beginning to read. They remind us that history is deeper and stranger than we imagine. that entire worlds can vanish and wait in silence for someone to notice they were ever there.